All right, welcome back. I hope you're having an awesome time so far. Our next speaker is Amir Kashani, PhD. He is the Director of AI and Digital Product Development at Stanley Black & Decker. Please join me in welcoming Amir to our virtual stage.
Thank you, Petrika. Thank you for a very warm welcome. And thanks everyone for joining my session on some strategies and tactical moves for AI enablement for global operations. I've been leading AI projects, including IoT, data collection, analytics, and providing digital products in a Stanley Black & Decker, one of the largest tool providers and supply chain owners in the world. And I'm going to share with you a few lessons that I've learned over the last couple of years. I hope it helps you. So first, let's start by establishing where we are and what we're talking about when we're talking about analytics and AI. A lot of you already are familiar with this well-established chart that we always start with descriptive analytics. We go to diagnostics, we try to do some predictions. What is really cool is if we can prescribe, or if the AI can prescribe some best actions to the user. That can be by augmentation of the user's already existing knowledge through historical data, or perhaps bringing other sources of data and insights into business as usual decision-making cycle. And one level beyond that is cognitive, which is basically understanding the bigger context of things and bringing computer vision, audio, or generally like things that were not historically possible with the basics. Now, where is the AI in this? I argue that AI is in every step of this. AI doesn't have to be in the cognitive level. AI can be in the diagnostics level. You can use AI to do very, very deep root cause analysis, very dynamic. You can run simulations of scenarios that never existed before with AI and generate really good diagnostics confidence around your call. Obviously, you can do AI for predictive and prescriptive, and even for descriptive, you can utilize UI to convert the insight to the human language. So in fact, this chart will have another dimension of AI all over the place. So this is what we mean by AI. So that's the first step of setting the definitions in place. Second one is, why should you care about the timing, and why should you care about the leapfrog strategy? Can we just take our time? Can we just wait for the big players to solve the problem and we can use some commoditized solutions? Well, some people say it's better to be 3 hours early than a minute too late. And there are well-established studies to show that. There are surveys run by big consulting firms over a large number of supply chain providers, manufacturers, and media companies, and they are showing that the 5% top leaders are probably taking 80% of the benefits of digitization. They take competitive advantages that the competitors cannot compensate it within a few years. However, they also noted that 70% of the transformations failed. So is it the fear of failure that caused some AI adopters to lag the adoption? Or is it the leaders' culture of failing fast, learning, and moving, causing them to be the leader? We don't want to pinpoint that one, but you are somewhere in that spectrum. And we want to reduce that risk. We want to reduce the risk of failing, and we want to speed up failing fast process. And also in the process, within this strategy, you will reduce your fear of failure as a result. So in short, we are looking as AI in a way to fast forward the digitization journey. And this is the core of our leapfrogging strategies. Conventional strategies for digitization are generally using AI. It starts with this. You get a big buy-in from senior leaderships. You bring a lot of stakeholders in. You create a common vision among them. You create win-win scenarios. You secure some budget. All of these are difficult. A lot of them are catch-22 or catch-20 because they need to see some impact before signing on an agreement. So now you don't have a budget to show any impact. hard goal. Then you launch, you started the Lighthouse project. You try to look at the lowest hanging fruit with the highest impact, another hard task. Then you want to bring in a high caliber launch team. Well, it's quite hard. AI skills is a shortage. You don't know who to hire for your problem because the problem is not identified. You're barely looking at that Lighthouse project. Then you want to organize and promote agile ways of working across the organization that historically perhaps it was not a data-driven organization. It was not a software-driven organization. No one knows what AI is. People have different ideas of what AI means, right? So, but that's part of it. That's part of the conventional steps. You create a culture of education across your company. Hopefully by now you have a successful prototype. Everybody heard about it. Everyone in the organization knows that that team is very successful. Now everybody wants it. Now you have to scale up. You have to have tools to really go and serve all these islands that you left. Or breaking the silos, bringing them together. Now you might feel like maybe scaling this up was not as easy as this 3-stage process was suggesting. You need to build capabilities across the team. You need to democratize really utilization of digital tools because you cannot depend on a team of 5 or 10 to reform $1 billion organization. So you need to go for adopting an operating model. This is the conventional strategies publicly available to everyone, and everybody is trying to do it. However, it's like death by 1,000 cuts. What do we mean by leapfrog strategies? The root of this goes to World War II, unfortunately. But the idea was instead of island hopping, it was a war between Japan and US. And instead of island hopping and going island after island with extremely highly fortified enemy lines, you would just go to the main target and you go for the final target. What is the final target in AI enablement in big enterprise? What are the heaviest fortified lines? These are two of the questions we're going to address today. And this is the way we want to handle the situation of how can we speed this up? How can we either fail fast or be successful very fast? The first fortified lines is that a lot of people are really busy with what they do, with the existing goals, and with allocated hours and resources that they have. So when you want to suggest them a wheel, this is one of my favorite comics, is that nope, thank you, there's no time there. However, there's a wisdom in there. They see more than what you see as an AI COE team or as whoever is trying to consult an organization. They are more aware of the details of the problem. It is not just being busy. The information sharing is not happening. So let's look at what they see that makes them feel like we are too busy is a good answer when you're suggesting a wheel. Number one, data quality. They have a lot of data and they think they need a lot of data scientists to clean the data. And they know the data is not organized. They know there is not so much perhaps that can come out of that data. So then companies go and start hiring data scientists to come and slice and make dashboards to finally look into this data. And by the time they do that, they just get barely to the same level of that analyst that was doing that job for years. So the analyst is happier to have a cool looking, colorful plots, but they want more. So we need to move from that. Instead of focusing on, hey, we need data scientists to clean the data and make some dashboards for us, we need to implement right off the bat digital tools to make sure that the data that are being accumulated, they are contextualized for AI, and they're organized in a way that it really simplifies the analysis. So from the moment you deploy your AI strategy, you do not generate any useless data anymore. And you look into what data is being entered every day by every analyst or technician or engineer or supply chain manager. So that will solve your data quality problem moving forward. That's an easy way to understand what's the process. You're getting out of garbage in, garbage out by fixing the process of data entry rather than trying to clean the data post-mortem. So you create your internal apps. And one of the things about my presentation today is that I'm going to get the specifics, not paid by any of the organization, but I'm trying to tell you what some of my favorite tools. So you start promoting, democratizing, teaching people to use BI tool. One of the good examples is Power Apps. So everybody can make a Power Apps app with minimum code or no code. Those apps can create data. They can be connected to your databases, different ERP system, but they take care of contextualization of the data. For example, you can mark that this transaction not only was done in this date and this time and I received the shipping, but also it was a successful one, or this was not a successful one. You can contextualize that transaction with having a tiny app right next to it. The times will get matched later. They don't have to be in the same database, but based on that, we can just know who is good and who is bad. I mean, from the transactional perspective. You can use enterprise data visualization tool that can handle big data. For example, like Kibana is a good one. And generally, do not try to hire developers to build your dashboards. You democratize creating the apps, and you're using enterprise dashboarding tools to just get the ball going. So that's the fortified line number 1, data quality, and how to completely skip it. Common obstacle number 2, processes. We have a lot of systems. We have a lot of processes that are systematic. But when you look closer, there are a lot of exceptions. And a lot of people who are obsessed with 80-20 approach. They want to look at the majority of the cases and forget about the tail. Now, here's the catch. That's the way human solves a problem. But AI has the capability to go after a fat tail of all those exceptions much faster than any person. People want to focus on what is common and what is usual. So let the AI chase the fat tail problem. And for those of you who are not familiar with the fat tail, I have a tiny picture here that in any distribution that you think it might be normal, and you might think you can skip about all the exceptions and all the abnormalities and all those situations that used to be once in a lifetime, but somehow if you look closer, they're very common and there are big monies hiding there. The tail is fat. So in a lot of cases, so that 80% of your data that is only in charge of your 20%, and you might not look at it because it's not important, you can utilize AI to look into that. As a process of that, you can absorb a lot more data, a lot more value, and actually your AI will learn all those exceptions, and in the process, it will learn the process. So as a result, you digitize your tribal knowledge about all those exceptions. So that's the common obstacle number 2, and how to handle that. Number 3, a muscle memory, or some people might call it a bias to action or bias to lack of action. It can go both ways. So the way I define it is, it's a very interesting study in goalkeepers in soccer. If they just don't move and just stay where they are, they can save 1/3 of the goals, but they always jump. That's a bias to action, or that's a muscle memory. One of the reasons is if a goalkeeper just doesn't move on any penalty kick, maybe they're not going to make any name in the industry, or it doesn't look good for a game. But in fact, statistically, it's as efficient as jumping either direction, right? You either jump right, 1/3 left, or you stay there. They take their chances. That's a bias to action. So a lot of executives, for a good purpose, they want it now. They want an action now. Or they already have a solution in mind that they want to go to that first before implementing the AI. How can we get from that to some AI-enabled solution without getting into the bottle of compromising some of the AI features with some quick solution that can happen now, or something that was already designed and they just need to buy it? So a very good exercise that it worked for me many times is let's assume that you have that tool or whatever it is, we call it now, and see what else is missing. For example, I had a project where stakeholders were very interested to know the location of the asset at all times. And we are talking about heavy equipments here that are being used by customers. We rent them out. We want to know how much they are being used. We want to know where they are in their shipping or logistic process. Have they reached that station or not? And a global operation with large size. Everybody was focused on location. And they wanted to have now, because location technologies are quite easier and they are mature. But we changed the perspective by having just a thought experiment or a mock-up of loading up the locations of data in that day or historical data and showed them, here it is. You know where every asset is now. But now what? What else is missing? Don't you want to know if the shipping is on time or not? Don't you want to know if they're going to make it by the deadline or not? Do you want to know if this equipment is performing, is on or off? Is it being used or not? Is it being abused or not? How many cycles is on that equipment? There's a lot of other questions. So rather than having it now and then add another cost in the future, it's going to be twice as much as the cost. Let's solve the problem all together now. And you get so much more value the day one of your deployment. That's exactly what happened. We started seeing value during our pilot program. The pilot program paid off for the deployment of this throughout the global asset. So moving from muscle memories and bias to action and bias to going to what you already know to something in future. Assume that you have the future, and in that scenario, there's something else missing. We got used to our old wishes. We need to break out of that and create new wishes. Now that we know AI is an option, is part of the existing technologies that you can easily acquire. And last but not least, how to think about, or how to think in general in the AI world. A lot of people think AI is just an extension of software, but in fact, according to some of the best experts in the field, namely a great leader, Andre Karpathy, we are looking at the software 2.0 paradigm, meaning you don't need to go and generate rules and write code that way to capture a software that helps you with decision-making. You use the data, and that data is your code. So instead of trying to explain what a cat looks like, that it has 2 eyes and it has short ears, and it has a tail and it's fluffy and it's different from a rabbit, and now you have to explain what the rabbit is, all those set of rules that might take a long time. And in your business, it might mean what a good shipping look like, what a good product looks like, and etc. Moving to just feeding a lot of data with some labels of what is desired or what is not desired, and let the deep learning methods or let the AI figure out what that software should be. And this is the breakthrough of the century, to think about it completely differently. Obviously, you have program complexity can go way higher than what software 1.1 does. So think about it this way, that your data is actually a software that you're not aware of. Your data is the model of your business that no one else is aware of. No one else has a right to play in the space that your data is giving you, because that's your data and that's how you want to operate. And that by itself is a code. That by itself is a model. You can optimize it for sure, but you need to recognize that collecting enriched, contextualized data pays off a lot in a very short time. So with that, I'm going to summarize my talk into 5 main points. And I'm sure a lot of you agree with me that AI is not the end, but the tool to get there faster. So we always need to have that in mind to know where we want to go and how to go there faster. We cannot wait 2 years to develop an AI program to help us. Number 2, it makes you it helps you to make your transformation and value creation faster. So not only is a transformation by itself, but it's another layer to that transformation, and it creates value. So it's not helping you to get to your existing value more efficiently, but it helps you create on top of that. Number 3, it helps everybody in your organization to get to expert level of some activity that you have data around also faster. You can imagine a Matrix movie where some people learn how to run a helicopter in a few minutes. Not that crazy, but it helps your experts to make decisions using historical data in a very quick time. So it augments their knowledge. It is not going to replace people, but it's going to augment their skill set. Think of it as a free assistant. And this should be the forefront of every conversation that you have. Because a lot of times, unfortunately, if you are thinking AI is going to replace people, but that is not realistic. A lot of airplanes are running on autopilot, but nobody is taking the pilot out of the cockpit. Might not be an example that to fit to a lot of scenarios, but anytime that you have a subject matter experts with years of experience, you need to give them an AI first because it makes them even more efficient. And they'll help you with the transformation of the business. Now, how to jump in the digital transformation lifecycle is following the detailed steps that I mentioned here. Try to avoid some common mistakes, and hopefully we all be successful and part of the leading pack. And a story to tell the next time we get together. I'll add another piece of gift to my presentation to y'all. Some of the best books around that I can recommend you from some of the authors that I'm following their other writings, and obviously they did us all a favor and they put it in books. So one of them is AI and Unorthodox Lesson from Pedram, great friend of mine. Really great job in explaining in-depth concept of experimentation design, where to use AI and how to make the pipeline. Very technical book, but in very easy language. Amazing book. I recommend you all to get a copy. Read it digitally, perhaps. Second one is from Thomas Davenport. Doesn't need any introduction. An amazing book, an amazing writer, an amazing thought leader. Lights Out, a big example of how innovation houses can fail. Fortunately, in this case, the GE predicts, one of my favorite platforms. However, it lists a lot of common mistakes that might happen. On that line of how not to fail, obviously, why did digital transformation fail by Tony Swanda. That's another great book. And in a very meta level, if you want more of those goalkeeper examples and all the biases that we have in decision making, there's Ralph W. for you, The Art of Thinking Clearly. So I highly recommend you to get all these books on your shelf. And every time you're facing a decision-making problem or culture building strategy, have a look at them. So with that, I'm finishing my presentation by one line, that you don't have to walk before running. Everybody talks about it. You need to walk to the right place. And if there was any question, you can reach out to me at Amir Risk Consulting. I'll be very happy to help you. Thank you so much. And I hope I'm at time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amir. If you could just stop sharing your screen so the audience can give you a huge virtual round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing these insights with us. For the audience, it's time for you to make your way to your next session. Along the way, make sure you accept your connection request and check out our amazing AI exhibits. Thanks so much, and we'll see you around.
Thank you, Petrika.